Welcome to another week in review. We're going to be looking at the trading week of June 30th, 2025. A couple things to note right off the bat. Obviously, June 30th is monthly close, quarterly close as well. And then July 1st, which is Tuesday, will be a new month open and a new quarterly open. So as far as what price action looks like around those, it can be a little muddy, especially as you change over from quarters. So as far as expectations for this week, the weekly expected range from the Friday at the money straddle on the S&P is about 60 points. It's quite compressed. Obviously, we have some holidays this week too. Thursday is a half day. Friday is a closure for July 4th. So we have a weird week with a half day on Thursday. We have a lot of really impactful data that's jammed into this short week, and we have Friday closed as well as a Monday monthly close, quarterly close, Tuesday monthly quarterly open. So with all that being said, could be a relatively messy week. I don't really know, especially considering how light the expected range is for this week, even with a day down on the week. I don't have a lot of expectations for this week, and I think it's really going to be one of those weeks where I have to be open to either side of it, and I'm just kind of going in with no expectations at all for this week, other than just looking at areas that we can manage risk around. So we'll go through those. So as far as data goes, Monday we have PMI at 9:45 a.m. We have Powell speaking. 9:45 we have PMI, 10 a.m. we have Bostic, 1 p.m. we have Goolsby speaking. Tuesday, 9:30 Powell speaking as well. So that's just another thing to throw in there just to complicate things a little bit. So Powell speaking 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday, 10 a.m. we have ISM manufacturing and JOLTS. Wednesday, 8:15 a.m. we have the ADP employment print. Thursday, again, market is closed at 1 p.m. 8:30 a.m. we have NFP, and we have the unemployment rate. 10 a.m. we have ISM services that come out as well down in here. And then Friday, obviously Friday's a holiday, so July 4th is closed. U.S. equity market is closed. The volume is, I believe the futures market is open until 1 p.m., but there's no chance I'm trading that, so I'm not even going to pay attention to it. So be a nice long weekend. So just to cover things at kind of a high level here, this is ETH daily candles with the rollover here. This chart just rolls automatically when the contract expires, so it's a little these days in here are a little messy. But with that being said, the big thing to pay attention to as far as what this chart is showing is the prior all-time highs that we had back in January and February on the ES continuous contract are up here into 6160s to 6170s. So we're breaking away. We've broken away from this. The big thing that, from a higher time frame perspective, the big thing here that will shape my view is whether or not we can have continued acceptance above 6160 to 6170. So we have this huge weekly balance, prior monthly balance range that we broke down from, broke back up into, came back, tested the lows, tested the mid, and now we're breaking away from the highs. So from a greater context perspective and from an intraday perspective and higher time frame perspective, every higher time frame right now is one time framing up. So daily, weekly, monthly are all framing higher. Buyers at the moment are in complete control of this auction until proven otherwise. So as far as bias goes this week, I think looking at how we close this week, we close the week at a center neutral day. So we had a really nice liquidation move from the highs here. We had very exhaustive tape up into 6230s from an intraday perspective, and we did liquidate most of Friday's range, but we found a bid back into the meat of the previous day's value, and we closed back above the all-time highs on cash index, and obviously the all-time highs on the ES continuous contract. So until proven otherwise, buyers are in control. What I'm looking for early week is we left a poor high up here at 6230s. I do have a video with a live trade example of how I faded this high, which is also on this channel if you're interested in that. It's a long video, but I narrate it as it happens. So if you're interested in why I took the trade, etc., it's there. It's the last video on this channel. First thing I'm looking at is whether or not early Sunday, Monday, if there's interest in cleaning up this high. So again, buyers are in control. Buyers are in control of this auction. Every major time frame is framing higher. The default is this high should get cleaned up. So this high at 6240s should get cleaned up. We should see a market that's strong is going to clean this up relatively early. If we have acceptance above 6240s, what I'm looking for is likely a grindy extended move up into 6270s to the weekly expected move high is 6275s. So if we're above 6240s, I'll look for the continuous long trade to get back up into 6270s, and that's probably the only trade from a long side perspective above these highs I'd be looking for. So we'll look for the range extensions, and we'll look for the weekly expected move high into 6270s. So that'll be that. Where things change, in my opinion, is Friday's tape. To get into the weeds a little bit, Friday's tape was extremely exhaustive into this high. So broader context, buyers are in control of this auction. Where something could change here is the way that Friday looked, at least from an intraday perspective. Obviously, the lows got bought right back up when we closed center neutral day. But where things would change for me, given how extended this market is right now, there's two things I'm looking for. Obviously, first, I'd like to see this poor high get cleaned up, and I think a good long trade will be above last week's high, getting into the range extensions, or above 6230s and good bids into this, basically into the POC of Friday. So if we see some punches above, and then we see some decent bid and absorption start to form down into the 6220 area, and continuous lifts, then again I'll just stay intraday. I'll stay on the long side, and I'll look for the moves back up to 6270s. Where things change, if we sweep out last week's high, so if we see a really nice punch above 6240s into like 44 to 50 area, and we see a change, we see this high finally taper out, and then we see the tape shift and aggressive selling start to step in again, taking us back below last week's high, then I think, at least from a rotation standpoint, I'll be looking for shorts. So I'll be looking for shorts to get us back down into 6200s and ultimately test the area we broke out of on higher time frames into 6170s. So ultimately, buyers are going to be in control as long as we're above this 6160 to 6170 area. But what I could see happening here is if we fail up into last week's high, if we correct this high, or if we can't find buyers above 6230s, again, noting how heavy and exhaustive this tape was, then I think the likelihood of bigger players on this tape continuing to buy this up in the short term isn't as likely. And what I would be looking for is, short rotations down to 6200s to 6170s and filling out last week's distribution, filling out last week's profile, and probably putting in some balance up in this range. The other side of that too is if we do see this form, if we see some correction down into 6170s, and we see again a solid bid, noting at least in my opinion, buyers still remain in control above 6170s. If we see this give us a short rotation down, and we see a solid bid, solid lows start to form into 6170s, then again I'll be looking for that long trade back down here into 6160s to get us continuing higher. So ultimately what buyers want to do is they want to maintain above 6160. They want to build out this profile. They want to continue to build value above 6170s, continue to build acceptance above 6170s to get that continuation higher, and ultimately obviously grind up eventually into the 6400 area. That would be their goal from a higher time frame perspective. Where things would really change for me is if we lose 6170 to 6160. So if we lose this prior all-time high distribution high, these prior balance highs, then again, that short rotation for me would start up here. But if we lose 6160s, then again, I think this market, the odds of higher time frame buyers continuing to be aggressively buying this market are going to be fairly minimal, and it's going to be looking for a bit lower. So below 6170s, I'll be looking for the move down to the bottom of last week's value at 6114s, which is also a prior weekly high down in here. We could easily find some buying, responsive buying down to the bottom of this low. But I think if we're losing 6160s, I think the odds of this holding and this gap up holding aren't as likely. And I think likely, in my opinion, what I'd be looking for on a loss of 6160s would be obviously 114s would be the first target, but I'd be looking for this gap to fill, and I'd be looking to see if we get back into the 6070 area and potentially back down to the 20-day moving average as we're so extended away from it, down into the 6050 area. Basically, this multi-distribution day up that we had, basically filling in the poor structure of this multi-distribution day up. I think that's entirely possible if we start losing 6160s. So from an intraday rotation perspective, that's what I'm going to look at for ES. My focus this week is largely going to be ES because this has been easier. I've been paying more attention to it, and it's been easier for me to read, so it'll be simpler for me to continue trading it. The NASDAQ is very similar. So the NASDAQ also, the thing that I talk about in the video of the live trade that I have, and one of the reasons why I faded the highs on Friday, was due to the underperformance of the NASDAQ overall. So ES was putting in higher highs. NASDAQ was not able to do so. NASDAQ was lagging the entire day, stayed in balance, stayed in IB the entire day. And again, to me, combined with what I saw, on the order flow side of the ES book, led me to look for potential short rotations down, which obviously did work, and you can see that. I think NASDAQ, again, it's the same thing. So the prior December all-time high is up into 22,390s. Again, buyers are in control of this auction. And again, what we could see is fails at last week's high or fail below 22,690s and fill out this profile, put in some balance, and start to try and build value above this, forming a balance range up here. Again, buyers aren't really in trouble until we start getting back below 33.95s, and then that's just going to signal probably more correction down and probably fill the gap on the NASDAQ as well into this major pivot that we have and a naked POC we have down here into 22,100s, and we could easily see responsive buying down here as well. So from an intraday perspective, those are the rotations I'm looking at. From a broader perspective, again, I think as far as what's happening, this market is very extended to the upside. Obviously, that doesn't mean it can't keep going. And I think as far as, the primary thing that you need to pay attention to, the primary thing that I'm going to pay attention to would be how we trade around these prior all-time highs. That's pretty simple. This is a pretty simple area to watch. Basically, prior all-time highs, we have prior resistance. Does it turn into support? So do we turn this 6160 area on a back test? Do we hold it or do we fail below? And if we fail below, do we see acceleration back down to the downside, and do we see sellers really step in? Do we see that bid that's been on this ladder grinding this higher leave? Do we see those higher time frame buyers kind of exit for a little while, look for places to reload lower? I think that's more likely if we start losing 6160s personally. And do we see some sort of move that flushes out those late hands, those late buyers that have been buying these highs all the way up, and then do we start to see like a mini capitulation move of late buyers that gives us a decent higher low on higher time frames to continue that move straight up. So that's what we're going to be looking for. That's what I'm looking for, at least. Hopefully that's pretty clear. Friday was an interesting day. It was an interesting week all week last week. Again, I think this could also be a pretty potentially tricky week with a half day holiday, as well as all of the data that we have coming out. NFP weeks can be historically very messy. They can be, especially the day of, considering the NFP day is actually a half day as well. I don't really know what to expect that day. I don't know if we're going to see a major move. I don't know if it's going to be a nothing burger. Usually NFP gives a lot of volatility. NFP combined with a half day, good luck. I don't know. So we're going to have to take it day by day. But as far as areas where I'm looking and areas where I'm trying to manage, that's exactly what I'm going to be looking for this week and next week as well, going forward. So hopefully that helps. If it does, like the video, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. The majority of the viewers on this channel are not actually subscribed, which is fine. I don't really care, but it'd be cool to see people sub to the channel too, to see if there's interest and continue to grow. So appreciate your time. Thank you very much.